Typhoon Maria strengthening near Japan, and another Atlantic storm might be on the way on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 9th. So Debby has finished its stint as a tropical storm at least or higher and is now down to a depression over the United States, likely to become post-tropical within 24 hours. Typhoon Maria strengthening as it pulls northwards, could still slam into the east coast of Japan, but still a very uncertain forecast. Day 70 of Atlantic hurricane season, and along with Debby, which is causing tons of flash flood warnings, we now have a 60% chance of development for another area of interest in the central Atlantic, which could pass through the Leeward Islands and then on towards maybe the Greater Antilles or the Bahamas. In the eastern Pacific, it's day 87, and we've got Amelia, which is still holding on for dear life, tropical depression, likely to vanish very soon into a remnant low, and a 20% chance behind it, which could develop into a brief tropical cyclone in the far eastern Pacific. So Typhoon Maria continuing northwards there, passing the Ogasawara Islands and then heading towards Japan possibly, and two other areas of interest which both have decent chances of developing, but we're not fully sure on how that's going to go. No areas of interest in the northern Indian Ocean. There's much less cloud coverage there this morning than there was yesterday, but still a few areas of storminess across central and southern India. And a surprise perhaps, but we have tagged a 10% area of interest in the southwest Indian Ocean near the equator, just on the southern side. Could be another surprise. Systems keep trying to form there in the off season, as we saw earlier in the year. Well, could be another one. Debby is currently 8 kilometers from Hamlet, 13 from Rockingham, 83 from Fayetteville, North Carolina, 110 from Charlotte, and 145 from Raleigh. It has crossed over just into North Carolina in the last couple of hours and is currently moving northwards at a relatively slow pace. Most of the banding on the northern side of it is obviously up there and producing significant flooding issues. Rain rates still fairly high in the depression. As for Maria, of course, a fully fledged typhoon, and it is currently 554 kilometers from Torishima, 647 from Aogashima, 729 from Mikurajima, closer to Tokyo, 816 from Chiba on the mainland, and 843 from Tokyo itself. Well, if the storm does pile into that region from the east there, it could cause all kinds of problems, would be one of the strongest storms to do so in that area, and of course given the massive urban conurbation of Tokyo with those strong winds and of course heavy rainfall. Well, first let's take a look at Debby on this satellite imagery, and it's still looking pretty decent from a visual perspective. Tons of banding on the northern side of it, merging into a front by this point. Convection isn't crazy, but definitely a massive rainmaker on the northern side of the depression now, continuing off to the northeast. Well, there are still some significant areas on the southern side as well, and there have been a few tornado warnings too recently, 1 or 2 PDS tornado warnings actually, further north towards Maryland. Southern side, a few little bits and bobs there as well, but it is mainly on the north of the storm, continuing to push through there northerly in its motion, now pushing continuously through North Carolina, eventually onto Virginia. Most of the convection is on the west and north side, really very little going on the southern side, but there are a few little pop-up thunderstorms that are occurring on that side as well, so stay vigilant all around Debby as it continues to push inland. There's some radar imagery once again from a wider perspective, and you can see some of the storms around the fringes could be ripe for tornadoes. Well, this is Amelia, also looking quite similar to Debby actually, really, isn't it? It's really on its last legs, about to turn post-tropical over cooler sea surface temperatures. It is on its way out for the first time in a good while. It will eventually have no active systems in the eastern Pacific. Of course, we've still got that area of interest. This is Maria. It looked pretty good earlier on. It still looks quite decent. A small core there surrounded by a massive area of convection, a secondary area on its eastern semicircle, looking quite remarkable on that imagery. No real signs of the eye appearing, but it is definitely there in that tight core in the middle of it all, and we're giving this an estimate of 80 miles per hour and a pressure estimate of 974 millibars. Currently moving in a northerly direction. It will eventually head towards Japan, where steering currents are going to become very weak, and there could still be scope for a landfall anywhere from Kyushu in the southern part of Japan all the way to the eastern tip of Hokkaido. Looking decent on satellite imagery with that flare-up. Here's another area of interest, 91W, which is still going, believe it or not, to the southwest of Adaitojima now, to the western part of Japan, the outer islands. Well, a tiny little circulation that's been going for a while, not much else. Here's the US East Coast, a full shot then of what Debby is doing, and cloud cover all across the northeastern United States, even into Maine now. Into the Caribbean Sea, there's some thunderstorms blowing up across Cuba and the Cayman Islands and western Jamaica, and a few little things going on over Central America as well from that disturbance that we were following. And this is the west coast of Africa into the eastern Atlantic. One or two little systems there, perhaps tropical waves, a little flurry of thunderstorms. Here's the eastern Pacific. You can see some rotation going on to the south of Guatemala there. That is the disturbance that we're watching. 20% chance. Could be a quick spin up, could be unpredictable, but it isn't expected to last very long or get very strong. And there you can clearly see Amelia. Still, you may have seen Carlotta off to the left hand side still at that point there with the remnants of it. This is the western Pacific. Maria just about to go off the top of the screen there up towards the north now, getting out of the Philippine region scope. And this is the Bay of Bengal region. A few storms blowing up off the coast of Bangladesh and eastern India. And moving into the Arabian Sea, a few little storms here and there off the western coast of India, but in general it is rather quiet. Sea surface temperatures are still very warm, and they're actually increasing in parts of the eastern Pacific that are on the fringes of the 26 degrees Celsius isotherm. Off the coast of Mexico, though, it's pushing 30 degrees Celsius and continuing off the coast of Guatemala. Gulf of Mexico, extremely warm, 32 degrees off Louisiana, where Debby is. Of course, it is well inland, but off the coast it is still around 28 degrees. Over the open Atlantic, looking good as well for that other area of interest, up to 30 degrees in a few spots. Western Pacific, extremely warm. Maria is sort of near the fringes though, around 27 to 28 degrees Celsius, but it will warm up again as it heads towards the northwest if it does so, or if it just pushes off the east coast of Japan. This is the North Indian Ocean, some decent temperatures here as well, 29 degrees and a good few spots there off the coast of eastern India and northeast of Sri Lanka. Looking at sea surface temperature anomalies, it is above average still across the whole of the Atlantic pretty much. A few spots near normal in the Sargasso Sea and off the east coast of the United States, but in general it is well above in all of the other spots. Eastern Pacific, a few little cool spots there from recent tropical storms, but generally it is above average. Western Pacific, generally above average as well. A significant cold spot there near Maria now, thanks to that storm. And the South Indian Ocean for that potential system is around 2 degrees above as well. Western Pacific oceanic heat content is still looking extremely good indeed. Where Maria is though, not so much. It won't have too much advantage on that. Maybe a little bit more later on though near Japan. Eastern Pacific only has one or two little spots off the coast of Mexico. Atlantic looking very good as well. Caribbean Sea in particular, but extending some decent energy values off the coast of the Leeward Islands in the northern part of the Lesser Antilles, and the Gulf of Mexico also looking good. Two spots in particular there looking really good indeed, and one or two small spots in the Gulf Stream. GFS computer model then for the next 5 days. You can see storm force winds affecting New York and New Jersey and continuing through the northeast, and then this system continuing to develop potentially. Models are really starting to support this now, almost unanimous support for something to occur out of this. I think the Euro model is probably the most apprehensive, having a borderline tropical cyclone, but all the others are on board. Most GFS ensembles as well, predicting this to become a tropical cyclone, and there it is, becoming becoming a tiny hurricane as it moves through the northernmost islands of the Lesser Antilles. There's Maria, typhoon impact potential for the east coast of Japan, an extremely odd track there. Memories of Yongdari perhaps, or Lion Rock in 2016 and 2018, but that system Maria continuing to push inland there, very close to Tokyo, just north as a category 1 it would appear there, with the pressure down into the 960s, continuing west-northwestwards. Maybe one or two other systems there forming off that Gaia to the south there over the western Pacific too. Rainfall expectations from Maria as well could get quite significant in very highly populated areas. We're expecting maximums on the mountains there to get above 10 inches, I think it was, around 250 millimeters. In the city of Tokyo and the other regions around there could be getting up to 9 inches, that's nearly 250 millimeters. So a lot of population there have a significant flood risk if that scenario takes place. Still a huge amount of uncertainty on this storm's future track, and it could indeed actually stall. In the longer range, in the medium range, take day 5 to 10. That's a hurricane there grazing the eastern part of Puerto Rico, moving through the Virgin Islands probably, just north of the Turks and Caicos, and then sweeping, recurving northwards. Major hurricane status there as it does so in the Western Atlantic, a bit close for comfort for the east coast of the United States, and towards the end of that 10-day period it is starting to do that next step of the recurve, starting to move northeastwards with tropical storm force winds just off the coast. Western Pacific, that next system possibly also maybe becoming a typhoon, moving up there through the Amami Islands of Japan, and then just west of Kyushu, actually an impact there for the southeastern tip of South Korea, the Busan area, potentially getting a substantial typhoon. Of course, it's quite a long way out, a lot of uncertainty. Of course, we've not even passed Maria yet. We'll have to wait and see. And another tropical disturbance there near Hong Kong as well that tries to develop. This is the southwest Indian Ocean as well. Could it be another little surprise to the party of storms that we've got? Well, there is a system trying to develop. GFS is not the only model that is forecasting something in this medium range period, so it certainly bears watching. 10% chance that may get increased if we get some stronger signals as we get closer to the day. Wow, some incredible stuff there. Well, that's the serious stuff done. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our items as well as our full season and individual store animations on request. And I'm still waiting for a Hone t-shirt. There is a little Central Pacific disturbance that we didn't show you, but it's not likely to develop. Well, in the Scilly range then, day 10 to 16, that Atlantic system continuing off, massive recurve actually, does the full 9 yards there, and then continues east, and eventually it loses its momentum, maybe a second wind there. Looks like it's post-tropical though, as it gets close to the Azores. Well, we know what the Atlantic's like. I can just see this thing trending west and west and west, and it's going to end up affecting the US again, but who knows right now. Real discrepancy in the ensembles. It really depends on how quickly it develops as to where its track goes. Now, that storm that moves through South Korea goes on towards Japan again, so after we have Maria going east to west through central Honshu, we now have this second storm moving west to east. What a remarkable turn of events if that was to occur. And quickly over to that southwest Indian Ocean system. There it is, continuing just for a brief spell before hitting a massive wall there of shear near Madagascar, and eventually completely dies off. Quite reminiscent of that other area of interest that we had back in, I think it was May. Well, back on this day, we had the Western Pacific lit up once again. It was Typhoon Lekima, which was heading through the southernmost Ryukyu Islands of Japan as a Category 4 on this day 5 years ago in 2019. It would then sweep up towards the coast of China. We also had Typhoon Kroso, which at this point had reached Category 2 status. It would go on to become a very large, huge eye on that system as it approached Japan in the following days. And a little surprise there, nothing was active in the Western Hemisphere, but we knew what was brewing a few weeks later, didn't we? Well, back to today then. The next name in the Atlantic is Ernesto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Gilmer. And in the Central Pacific, it is indeed still Hone. 33 storms so far around the world in 2024, actually still quite a bit below average. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Son Tin. And in the North Indian Ocean, it is Asna. Now, whilst the storm numbers are below average, the actual ace in the Atlantic is quite a bit above what we would expect by this point, mainly thanks to Beryl, but also Debby too. In the Australian region, the next name is Robin, as that season starts up later in the year. Southwest Indian Ocean, could it be an early start for Ansha? And the South Pacific, it's Pitta. That's it from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow. Become an ultimate fan today.